The glowing orb of Dracovery Prime hung in Commander James Holloway's tactical display like a jewel waiting to be shattered. He watched it pulse with the rhythms of a billion lives, none of which knew what was about to fall from the sky. "Contact in 17 minutes, Holloway said, his voice steady as bedrock. "All kinetic packages confirm green status." Lieutenant Sarah Cole's fingers danced across her console, the holographic interface painting her face in shifting blues. "Thermal signatures match projections. They're still running standard defensive grid. No adjustments since we entered the system." "They don't think we're a threat," Holloway said. He leaned back in his command chair, feeling the subtle vibration of the UEF Resolute's engines through the deck plating. 1,500 ships against 12. Mathematical certainty in their favor. On the view screen, the Dracovari fleet spread across space like a living constellation. Their vessels glowed with bioluminescent patterns, chromatophores shifting through colors that human eyes struggled to process. Beautiful, elegant, absolutely convinced of their superiority. Cole pulled up the transmission logs. "Admiral Zyrax called our railguns quaint chemical propulsion, said they belonged in a museum next to Earth's first gunpowder weapons." "Admiral Zyrax is about to receive an education," Holloway said. "How long until the Pale Horizon completes its maneuver?" 4 minutes. Captain Webb confirms stealth package is holding. They're invisible to everything the Dracovari have. Holloway nodded once. The Dracovari had laughed when humanity presented kinetic weapons at the Covenant Station negotiations. Their plasma technology, their gravitational lances, their quantum disruptors, all far more advanced than simple mass accelerated to relativistic speeds. They dismissed humanity's entry into galactic politics with the casual disdain of apex predators encountering prey that didn't understand the food chain. Cole's console chirped. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Sovereign Wrath. It's Zyrax again." "Put him through." The view screen shifted. Admiral Zyrax filled the display, his reptilian features shifting through contemptuous purples and dismissive grays. His four eyes blinked in sequence, a Dracovari gesture of profound disrespect. "Commander Holloway," Zyrax said, drawing out the name like a parent addressing a stubborn child. "You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender your vessels. We will accept your submission with minimal punishment." Holloway met all four eyes without blinking. "We decline." Zyrax's scales rippled through amused yellows. "Your 12 ships against our empire's might. Even for primitives, this demonstrates extraordinary foolishness." 13 ships, Holloway corrected. "You miscounted." The color drained from Zyrax's scales for just a moment, confusion white, before arrogance returned. "It changes nothing. Your projectile weapons move at speeds we can track with optical sensors. Our point defense systems will reduce your attacks to vapor before they cross half the distance." "You're absolutely right," Holloway said. Cole's eyes snapped to him, but he kept his expression neutral. "Our ship-mounted railguns are no match for your defenses." Zyrax's scales settled into satisfied gold. "Then The orbital bombardment platforms, however, are a different matter." Holloway gestured, and Cole cut the transmission. She stared at him. "Sir, did we just tell him about—" "2 minutes won't matter." Holloway pulled up the tactical overlay. High above Dracovari Prime's orbital plane, 38 stealth platforms that had been drifting in system for 3 months powered up simultaneously. Each carried a single tungsten rod, 20 meters long, 2 meters wide, positioned with the patience of stones waiting to fall. "Impact in 90 seconds, Cole reported, her voice tight. "Pale Horizon confirms all packages active. Webb says the Dracovari sensor grid just lit up like a Christmas tree." On the view screen, the Dracovari fleet erupted into motion. 1,500 vessels that had been holding formation broke into coordinated defensive patterns. Their weapons charged with visible light, energy signatures spiking across every spectrum. "They're targeting our ships," Cole said. "Looks like they think we're the threat." Holloway watched the display with the calm of a man holding 4 aces. "Zyrax is a brilliant tactician. He's deploying exactly as I would. But sir, they're not even looking up. 80% of warfare is what your enemy knows," Holloway said. 20% is what you let them believe." The Dracovari fleet opened fire. Plasma bolts crossed the void in streams of superheated matter. Gravitational lances bent space itself into weapons. Quantum disruptors unmade the fabric of reality in controlled bursts. The UEF Resolute's shields flared as the first impacts registered. "Shields at 73%, Cole reported. "Vanguard taking heavy fire. Their forward shield collapsed." "Tell Commander Grant to fall back behind the threshold," Holloway ordered. "All ships, defensive formation Delta. Make them work for it." The human vessels moved with practiced precision, smaller and more maneuverable than their Dracovari counterparts. They wove between fire patterns, shields flaring and regenerating, buying time with space and motion. 60 seconds to impact. On Dracovari Prime, in the capital city of Velthara, High Chancellor Vara stood on her command balcony watching the orbital defense grid respond to the detected threats. Her scales shifted through confident oranges as she observed the coordination of her fleet. The humans fight with desperation, she said to her tactical officer, Dreskar. Brave for primitives, but ultimately irrelevant. Dreskar's scales showed agreement greens. Admiral Zyrax reports their shields are degrading. The battle will conclude within the hour. Vara's chromatophores pulsed with satisfaction, and they claimed kinetic weapons would revolutionize warfare, as if velocity alone could overcome true technology. 40 seconds. The tungsten rods fell in absolute silence, gravity's patient hand accelerating them through the mathematical certainty of orbital mechanics. They'd been placed 3 months ago, during the human diplomatic mission to Dracovari Prime. Smuggled in components, assembled in the dark, positioned with astronomical precision. Each rod weighed 15,000 kilograms. Each fell from an altitude of 1,200 kilometers. Physics transformed them into weapons that made nuclear devices look gentle. 20 seconds. Sir, Dracovari forces have broken through our defensive line, Cole said. They're targeting the Ashen Crown. Captain Pierce is... Wait. Her hands flew across her console. Pale Horizon just transmitted. Impact imminent. Holloway brought up the feed from their stealth observer. The rods were invisible now, moving at 30 kilometers per second, wrapped in plasma sheaths from atmospheric friction. Even if the Dracovari looked up, they'd see nothing but meteors. 10 seconds. High Chancellor Vara noticed the flash on her horizon first. A point of light brighter than their sun appeared above the industrial sector of Thelvar, 4,000 kilometers north. Then another, and another. What? She began. The shockwave from the first impact reached Velthara at the speed of sound, shattering the crystal towers of the governmental district. The second impact landed in the ocean 300 kilometers east, generating a tsunami that would drown the coastal cities. The third struck the planetary defense grid's main power station, and the protective shields that had guarded Dracovari Prime for 8 centuries flickered and died. 35 more rods followed. The kinetic energy release of each impact exceeded that of a 50-megaton nuclear weapon. But where nuclear devices wasted energy in radiation and heat, tungsten rods converted their velocity into pure physical destruction. They punched through the planet's crust like bullets through paper, triggering earthquakes that registered on seismographs across 3 continents. Vara's command center collapsed around her. The last thing she saw before the ceiling fell was her planet's atmosphere beginning to burn. In orbit, aboard the Sovereign Wrath, Admiral Zyrax watched his homeworld die. His scales shifted through every color of grief and rage, settling finally on the black of absolute shock. Impossible, he whispered. They're projectiles. Simple mass and velocity. We have defense systems for... They came from above orbital plane, his tactical officer reported, voice breaking. 38 simultaneous impacts, struck before detection was possible. Zyrax's 4 eyes fixed on the human fleet. The 12 ships, 13, he corrected himself bitterly, hung in space like daggers, small, primitive, utterly lethal. Sir, ground command reports. The officer's scales went white. Ground command is not responding. Planetary communication grid is down. Atmospheric composition showing critical cascade. The impacts have triggered. Zyrax knew what they'd triggered. Kinetic bombardment of that magnitude on a planet with Dracovari Prime's tectonic instability would cause a chain reaction. The crust would fracture. The atmosphere would hemorrhage into space. His homeworld was already dead. It just hadn't stopped moving yet. He activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, emergency withdrawal to... Belay that order, a human voice cut through. Commander Holloway appeared on every screen in every Dracovari vessel. Admiral Zyrax, I believe we have something to discuss. Zyrax's scales went through furious reds before training reasserted itself. You've murdered 1 billion lives. Civilians, children. There can be no discussion after genocide. Holloway's expression remained carved from granite. Your empire invaded 14 human colonies in the past 2 years. You dismissed our defensive capabilities, laughed at our technology, and calculated that we lacked the will to respond with appropriate force. He leaned forward. You miscalculated. This is not warfare, Zyrax said, his scales trembling through betrayed yellows. This is extinction. This is demonstration, Holloway corrected. You have 4 colony worlds and 17 major stations. We have bombardment platforms in orbit around each one. Every single population center in Dracovari space is currently targeted by kinetic packages identical to what just fell on your homeworld. The bridge of the Sovereign Wrath went silent. Zyrax's tactical officer pulled up the scans, his scales draining to shock white as he confirmed the human's claim. Sir, I'm detecting... They're everywhere. How long have they been? 9 months, Holloway said, since your forces first crossed into human territory. We tried diplomacy, we tried negotiation. You called us primitives playing with chemical fire. His voice hardened. We are primitives, and we learned long ago that the most primitive weapon, used with sufficient will and precision, is more effective than the most advanced technology in hesitant hands. Zyrax felt something break inside him. His scales settled into defeated grays. What do you want? Complete military withdrawal from human space, reparations for the colonies you destroyed, and a formal peace treaty acknowledging humanity's sovereign territory. Holloway paused. You have 1 hour to begin compliance. For every minute beyond that deadline, another one of your cities learns about kinetic energy the hard way. Subscribe and hit the bell for more military sci-fi. Now, back to it. But it was Lieutenant Sarah Cole who saw the real twist before anyone else. Her eyes widened as she pulled up the atmospheric data streaming from Dracovari Prime. Sir, the burn patterns, they're not random. Holloway glanced at her, and she transferred the data to his personal screen. The impacts had been catastrophic, yes, devastating beyond measure, but the burn was spreading in a controlled pattern, consuming oxygen in specific vectors, and the seismic activity was triggering along fault lines that would stabilize. She looked up at him. You didn't target randomly. These impact points were calculated to look like extinction while preventing it, Holloway said quietly, switching to a private channel. The planet will burn for 72 hours. The atmosphere will thin by 40%, but the core will stabilize, and the remaining atmosphere will equalize. He met her eyes. 300 million Dracovari will survive if they reach the deep shelters in time. Cole's hands trembled on her console. But Admiral Zyrax thinks we just killed his entire species. Admiral Zyrax needed to believe humanity capable of extinction-level response, Holloway said. His empire, his government, his military high command, they all need to believe it. Fear of mutually assured destruction is the only language that will keep this peace. And when they discover the truth, when they realize we pulled our punches, Holloway turned back to the view screen where Dracovari vessels were already beginning their withdrawal. Zyrax had broadcast the footage of his dying homeworld across every channel in the Empire. Humanity, the primitives with their simple kinetic weapons, had demonstrated the capacity for absolute destruction. They won't, Holloway said. The deep shelters are shielded against all conventional scans. By the time anyone realizes survivors exist, the peace treaty will be 20 years old, and this moment will have become legend. He watched the last Dracovari ship jump to FTL. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for an enemy is let them believe you're a monster. Cole sat back in her chair, processing the weight of what they'd done. The other platforms, the ones around their colonies and stations. Empty shells, decoys. Holloway pulled up the casualty estimates from Dracovari Prime. 300 million survivors from a population of 1.4 billion. Horrific losses, but not extinction. Not even close to what Zyrax believed had occurred. Sir, we still killed over 1 billion people to sell this lie. Yes. Holloway's voice carried the weight of every life that number represented. We did. And I will carry that knowledge until the day I die. He looked at her directly. But the alternative was a war that would have consumed both species completely. The Dracovari had the numbers, the technology, the strategic depth. Humanity had desperation and a willingness to strike first with overwhelming force. He pulled up a classified file on his personal display. Cole leaned in to see casualty projections for a conventional war with the Dracovari Empire. The numbers started in billions and climbed from there. Human High Command ran every simulation, Holloway continued, every scenario. This was the only option that preserved both species. He closed the file. History will remember me as the man who burned Dracovari Prime. Let it. Better than being remembered as the man who watched humanity get exterminated because we fought fair. Cole was silent for a long moment. Then, the Chinese have a saying, kill one, frighten 10,000. We killed 1 billion to save 10, Holloway said. The mathematics are horrifying, but they're also final. 3 hours later, the formal surrender came through. Admiral Zyrax transmitted the unconditional terms of Dracovari withdrawal, his scales locked in permanent mourning black. He looked like a man who'd aged a century in a single day. Commander Holloway, Zyrax said, his voice hollow, my people will honor this treaty. We have no choice. But know this, the Dracovari will never forget what you've done, what you're capable of. Good, Holloway said simply. Neither will we. The transmission ended. Cole began coordinating the fleet's withdrawal pattern when a priority alert flashed across her console. Her blood went cold. Sir, we have a problem. The Pale Horizon is reporting a malfunction in Platform 7. Holloway straightened. Malfunction how? Its targeting lock has drifted. It's no longer aimed at empty ocean. Cole's voice dropped to a whisper. It's locked onto Velshadra. Population center, 40 million, and the failsafe just went offline. Velshadra was a sanctuary city, Holloway knew, where the Dracovari sent their most vulnerable, the injured, the ill, the very young, and very old. A city of those who couldn't fight, wouldn't fight, existed only to be protected. Captain Webb, this is Holloway. Report status on Platform 7. Commander Nathan Webb's voice came through heavy with static. Catastrophic systems failure, sir. We're locked out of targeting. The package is armed and falling in 90 seconds. We're attempting manual override, but the code's corrupted. Holloway's mind raced through the mathematics. Platform 7 was carrying a standard load, 15,000 kilograms of tungsten, velocity at 30 kilometers per second. Impact on Velshadra would punch through to the mantle. The city would simply cease to exist, along with 40 million Dracovari who'd never held a weapon. Webb, can you destroy the platform before release? Not without triggering immediate launch. The failsafe corruption made it a dead man's switch. We touch it, it drops. 70 seconds. Cole pulled up the tactical options. Sir, the Vanguard is in range. Their point defense lasers could potentially vaporize the rod in descent, but the window is 4 seconds, Holloway said, reading the same data. With a 92% chance of missing, and a 100% chance of revealing we're attempting to prevent the strike. He felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a physical thing. If they let it fall, 40 million more dead. Their carefully calculated mercy shattered. If they intervened and failed, the Dracovari learned humanity had been pulling punches, potentially reigniting a war they couldn't win. If they intervened and succeeded, same result. 50 seconds. Lieutenant Cole, open a channel to the Sovereign Wrath. Priority override. Sir, if you warn them, open it. Zyrax appeared on screen, his scales still deep morning black. Commander, if you're calling to gloat, Platform 7 is experiencing malfunction, Holloway cut through. Velshadra is targeted. Impact in 43 seconds. Evacuate if you can. Zyrax's scales went shock white. You're warning us? The strike wasn't authorized, Holloway said, hating the lie but needing it. 40 seconds. He watched Zyrax process the information, saw the moment the Dracovari admiral made his decision. There's no time for evacuation, but our atmospheric defense grid in that region is still operational. If we boost it to maximum, we might... Do it, Holloway said. Cole, Vanguard's firing solution. Webb, stand by on Platform 7 destruction protocol. The next 30 seconds moved in heartbeats. The Dracovari defense grid powered up. Ancient technology pushed beyond safety limits. The UEF Vanguard aligned its targeting lasers. Aboard the Pale Horizon, Webb's crew worked frantically to corrupt the corruption, seeking any code pathway to prevent the launch. 20 seconds. Webb, status? Still locked, sir. I can't... Wait, we've got something. Partial access. If we route through the thermal management system, we might be able to burn out the guidance package. Will it stop the drop? No, sir, but it might knock the trajectory off target. Might. 10 seconds. Holloway looked at Cole. She looked back, both of them knowing what came next. All assets engage, Holloway ordered. Make it count. The tungsten rod dropped. The Vanguard's point defense lasers reached across space with fingers of coherent light. The Dracovari defense grid created a wall of energy. Webb's team sent a power surge through systems never meant to carry it. The rod's guidance package burned out at 7,000 meters altitude. Its trajectory shifted 0.3 degrees. The defense grid vaporized 60% of its mass. The Vanguard's lasers sheared another 15% into plasma. What remained struck the ocean 80 kilometers from Velshadra. The impact still generated a tsunami, still killed thousands in the coastal districts. But 40 million Dracovari in the city's heart survived. Holloway sagged in his command chair. Cole's hands shook on her console. On the view screen, Zyrax stared at them with all four eyes wide. You tried to save them, the Dracovari admiral said, his scales shifting through colors that had no human names. After everything, after burning our world, you tried to save one city. Holloway met his gaze and made his choice. The war is over, Admiral. No more death unless you force our hand. Zyrax was silent for a long moment. Then his scales settled into contemplative silver. I don't understand you, Commander Holloway. Your species. You destroy with absolute ruthlessness, then risk everything to prevent additional destruction. You are either the greatest monsters in the galaxy or... He trailed off. Or, Cole prompted, or you understand something about warfare that we've forgotten in 10,000 years of supremacy, Zyrax finished. He straightened, some of the defeat leaving his posture. The treaty stands. But know this, the Dracovari will be watching humanity very carefully from now on. We're not sure yet whether to fear you or... Again, he paused. Respect us? Holloway offered. Zyrax's scales showed the faintest hint of amused yellow. Perhaps both. The transmission ended. Cole let out a breath she'd been holding. Sir, that was too close. If we'd been 3 seconds slower... We weren't. Holloway pulled up the casualty reports from Platform 7's impact. 4,000 confirmed dead from the tsunami, with thousands more missing. Added to the billion from the main bombardment. Numbers that would haunt him every time he closed his eyes. But not 40 million more. Not today. Lieutenant, seal all records related to Platform 7 malfunction under alpha-level encryption. As far as official history is concerned, that strike was intentional warning shot. Sir? Cole looked confused. The peace only holds if the Dracovari believe we're capable of casual extinction. Today's events stay classified for 100 years minimum. He met her eyes. That's an order. Yes, sir. She began the encryption protocols, then paused. Commander, the platforms around the other Dracovari worlds. When do we remove them? We don't, Holloway said. They stay in place. Empty decoys maintaining the illusion of mutually assured destruction. The greatest weapon is the one you never have to fire because everyone believes you will. He looked out at the stars where Dracovari Prime continued its slow burn, atmosphere hemorrhaging but core stabilizing exactly as planned. 300 million survivors huddled in deep shelters, believing themselves the last remnants of their species. They'd emerge in 72 hours to a devastated but livable world. Eventually, the population would recover. Eventually, someone might realize the bombardment had been precisely calculated for maximum fear with minimum extinction. By then, both species would have lived in peace long enough to make war unthinkable. Sir, Cole said quietly, was it worth it? A billion dead to save the rest? Holloway thought about the question for a long time. Finally, ask me in 20 years. If humanity and the Dracovari are trading peacefully, building together, moving past this moment into something better, then yes. If this is just a pause before the next war, then no. He stood from his command chair. Either way, I'll carry the weight. That's what command means. The UEF Resolute turned for home, leaving Dracovari Prime behind to burn and heal. On the command deck, Holloway pulled up the classified file one more time. The projections for conventional war. Billions dead on both sides. Civilizations shattered. A galaxy diminished. Against that, one planet devastated but surviving. One admiral carrying guilt that would never fade. One lie that both species needed to believe. He closed the file and looked at the glowing sphere in his tactical display, hanging in space like a jewel waiting to be shattered.